It's an end of an era in Cleveland as Nick Chubb is expected to sign with the Houston Texans. We finally have some details on the Aaron Rodgers contract in Pittsburgh. Talking about that as well. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Monday, June 9 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. These last few days, last few episodes that we've done here on the show, we've gotten news on players signing with new teams. On Friday or Thursday's episode, really, we had Aaron Rodgers officially signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then over the weekend on Sunday, we get word that one of the great running backs of the last several years, obviously has been derailed by injuries. He is leaving the Cleveland Browns and expected to sign later today with the Houston Texans, and that is Nick Chubb. We're going to talk about all of that here today and much more. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? I hope the weekend was great. How's everything going?
Yeah, everything's going great, Ari. Let's go ahead and start with that story you were talking about out of Cleveland/Houston, I guess we should say. Nick Chubb going out to the Houston Texans pending a physical, which normally we don't have to mention for a lot of guys because it's just one of the things everyone does. For a guy like Nick Chubb, who has had just a myriad of injuries with his knees, very much worth mentioning that this is going to have to be completely finalized before we see all the tweets come out from the team, this, that, and the other. But Nick Chubb, one of the most dominant running backs of the last decade, he went out there, put up major numbers with the Cleveland Browns. They said their goodbyes, sat here on the market for a little bit. He's going to be entering a running back room there in Houston that is led by Joe Mixon. They've got Dameon Pierce. Chubb's best days are certainly behind him, but do you see him having an opportunity to carve out a good role with the Texans?
So can we just start with this, Ben? And I feel like you would know this as well. Isn't it weird how connected the Browns and Texans always are?
I
It's
know.
Deshaun Watson trade. Remember the Brock Osweiler trade years ago? There was obviously this offseason, we had a lot of discussions here on the show about the Browns and Texans picking in the top of the second round and basically messing over some teams. There's so many different things that these teams are always connected. And here we are now again with a former Brown now joining the Houston Texans in Nick Chubb. And this was a player who obviously was beloved in Cleveland. Frankly, what the Browns did last year, and Andrew Berry deserves credit for this, the Browns could have easily cut Nick Chubb last year coming off that devastating injury from the year before where he suffered it. I believe it was Monday Night Football week 2, that injury versus Steelers, multiple ligament damages, multiple surgeries. He had a high cap number, no guaranteed money. They could have said, sayonara, we'll move on from you. But Cleveland decided to hang on to him. They did reduce his contract, take a pay cut with incentives to get some of the money back. But other teams in the NFL, I think, would have said, you know what, enough is enough. Major injury, you're not going to be back. They held him on for one more year, had a bit of an injury-riddled year once again this past season, but he heads now to Houston. It's an interesting situation because Joe Mixon kind of revived his career last year with the Texans. The Bengals essentially cut him last second, were able to find a trade partner. I believe it was a 7th-round pick, and Joe Mixon had a Pro Bowl year down there in Houston. And now with the reality of a 17-game schedule once again, and of course Houston hoping to make a deep playoff run, they want to have fresh legs there along with Joe Mixon. So you added a Nick Chubb as well. And I know you mentioned Dameon Pierce there, but he becomes a name to watch over here as somebody who can now become expendable in Houston. Of course, he had a great rookie year, has been used a little bit as a kickoff returner, and has actually had some success over there. But Houston also drafted a running back here in this past draft, somebody who they really like. So as a result, that could make Dameon Pierce here expendable, assuming this deal with Nick Chubb officially goes through. I would expect this Nick Chubb deal, once it's finalized, to be a bit heavy on incentives. We'll get the final numbers here at some point later today. But the Browns obviously drafted Quinshon Judkins and another running back as well in this past draft. That made him basically impossible to go back to Cleveland. There were some other teams who checked in. The physical will be a big part of this, but Houston, the team that they're building there, I know we talk a lot about teams around the NFL and who could be that surprise team this year. I think people kind of forget what the Texans did last year, where they won a playoff game and they were basically down by just one going into the fourth quarter against the Chiefs there in that divisional round game. And their defense is really, really good with all the young players they have over there, from Derek Stingley and Will Anderson and Jalen Petrie and Lassiter, their quarterback, who they're really high on. There's a lot of really Daniel Hunter, of course, as well. D'Amico Ryans being a defensive-minded head coach. You have CJ Stroud going into year 3. You know the receiving core with all the names that they have there, from the Nico Collins, and of course they drafted 2 guys there, the 2 Iowa State guys with Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. They traded for Christian Kirk. This is a team that has some pieces here. They redid the offensive line, and of course now having Mixon and Chubb together, the AFC South has been their division the last couple of years. This is a team that sneakily could very much be a really, really, really good team going into this year. And I know we always talk about the Chiefs and the Ravens and the Bengals and the Bills. The Texans are very much in that conversation as well, and they believe that as well. And the entire idea of reshuffling the offensive line the way they did this offseason, where they moved on from Laramie Tunsil, they moved on from Kenyon Green, they moved on from Shaq Mason. Part of it, and the part of the reason, and I don't know if they're going to mention this publicly, but they believe the culture, at least in that offensive line room, did not match the culture of the defense and the high energy they had. They wanted to change that up this year. And that's part of the reason why they made those switches there in the offensive line room. They also fire their offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. They have Nick Caley now running the offense, who comes over from the Sean McVay tree. There's a lot to be excited about with this Houston Texans team, and Nick Chubb joining the roster now as well is another big piece added over here as the offseason rolls on. A late addition here in the month of June, but somebody who I think could definitely be productive for this team as a tandem with Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I was going to mention that just from a strictly like a character and like a leadership perspective as well. This has got to be a big addition for a team that does have a lot of their best players being significantly young guys. I know you have like the Danielle Hunters, you have some of those dudes out there that have that track record of success over time, but this is a really big player coming into this just from a longevity perspective, and as well as just having this resume that says like, hey, not only did I compete at a high level, I was the best.
Exactly. And I think the important thing to mention here is the reality that Joe Mixon obviously didn't have the same catastrophic injury that Chubb had, but Joe Mixon was basically viewed as a running back at this time last year as somebody who basically didn't have it anymore. I mean, the Bengals literally were ready to cut him, and then the Texans came in for a 7th round pick. Just said, we'll take him instead of releasing him, and he'll have his options. We'll take him in for a 7th round pick, and he had an unbelievable year. Like we talk about the year that Saquon had, Derrick Henry had, Josh Jacobs had, all those running backs switching teams. Nobody really mentions Joe Mixon in that mix as well. He had an amazing year in Houston and really revived his career. So now you're going to have both these guys. You're able to keep those guys with fresh legs. I like the vision here that Houston has with both these guys. And again, their vision over here is obviously winning the AFC South, but they view themselves as a team that is very much in there with the rest of the top dogs there in the AFC, with the Bills, with the Ravens, and with the Chiefs. So this is just another player over here who's going to come in and help them do that. And I kind of feel like their offseason they had overall, definitely a lot of shuffling from the coaching staff perspective of the offensive side of the ball and the offensive line room. But for them, they really want the offensive culture and the energy to match what the defense has. The defense is always, there's an energy there that is different, that is led by D'Amico Ryans and all their young players. It didn't really feel the same last year on offense. And I know people kind of tried to say CJ Stroud had a bit of a sophomore slump last year. I would disagree with that a little bit. It's just the fact that his rookie year was so sensational that people were like expecting this next big jump. It's a hard jump to do what he did from his rookie year. The thing he did in his rookie year is stuff that veterans aren't doing in the NFL. So I understand he took a little bit of a step back, but still he had a pretty decent year overall. But this is the year where they're expecting the offense to really take that big next jump and also just have the same vibes that the defense has as well. And the staff change, the offensive line change, and of course, adding all those new receivers as well is they think is going to help for sure.
So with Chubb off the board, the list of like free agent running backs that are available right now has really dwindled down. One of the names that we've spoken about a lot on the show and even recently is J.K. Dobbins, somebody who had a lot of success last year with the Chargers. I know he went out there, he visited the Broncos. There's probably some other teams that he's still drawing interest from. But for the most part, these running back rooms seem to be set around the NFL. Do you think that Dobbins is going to be the one guy who's left out there that could go in and actually have a pretty significant role with the team?
Yeah, Dobbins, I mean, if you're going to look through the entire free agent running back class that is out there right now, and here it is on the screen, some of these guys, J.K. Dobbins was really the only one this past year who you would say had any sort of success. All these other guys, I'm sure everybody knows them from their fantasy teams over the years, but I don't think teams are viewing these guys as people we're looking to sign right now and expect to have an impact for our roster. I mean, part of the issue out there for most of these guys is as we all know, the running back draft class was just so insanely deep that all these guys were drafted from rounds 1, 2, 3, all the way till 7, even undrafted guys, where teams were like, looking at rookie mini camps, looking, of course, just drafting these guys with the picks that they did, where they view them as guys who could be on the field this year, whether it's an every down back like the Ashton Genties and potentially the Omarion Hampton, who was also drafted in the first round, but everybody else as well who could basically be role guys for these teams. That does not help the rest of the free agent running back class, like a Gus Edwards or a Jeff Wilson or all those other guys who have been in the free agent market for most of the offseason. So yes, J.K. Dobbins did have a visit with the Denver Broncos. Yes, it went really well. Yes, Sean Payton actually mentioned that publicly and said, we want to bring good players to our team, and J.K. Dobbins is a good team. But like we've mentioned in the past here on the show, the representation that J.K. Dobbins has and the asking price that they've had all offseason long has been too high. And as a result, that's part of the reason why he has been a free agent for so long. So clearly the money is not there yet in Denver. I would still keep a very close eye on that situation because they are believed to be the front runners here to sign him at some point. It would make sense. I know they have a bunch of young guys on that roster, 3 or 4 guys, but there isn't that top guy right now who for sure could be the guy. So Dobbins will make sense on a 1-year deal most likely. So we'll see what ends up happening. But when it comes to the free agent running back class, it really is Dobbins and then everybody else, even Nick Chubb, who is an exceptional player, all pro, 4-time Pro Bowler, all of it. He's had back-to-back years, obviously, with injuries. And, of course, the first one being a very, very significant one. He's come back from it, but you don't really know if you're going to get 17 games out of Nick Chubb. So we're going to see what his contract actually is going to be in Houston. And like I said before, I expect it to be very incentive-laden over here once those details come out.
Well, some of the contract details that we've been waiting on over the weekend have actually started to come out, and that has to do with Aaron Rodgers, the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. That's going to take a little bit of time getting used to. Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers has agreed to a 1-year, $13.65 million contract. There is $10 million guaranteed, and he also has an opportunity to earn up to $19.5 million with incentives. So that's another $6-ish million that can be packed into that contract. I do have a question here because there's been a whole lot made about the fact that like Rodgers is like, I don't need a boatload of money. You don't have to unload the brink truck for me to be able to get there to be the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. I'm happy with just like a, whatever number of 20 million, whatever. So with all that being said, $381 million Aaron Rodgers will have accrued over the course of his career. It's the most money any quarterback, any player has ever made in NFL history, passing Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, those guys. A lot of money. He doesn't seem worried about it, but yet we still have incentives in the contract. I don't know. Just seemed a little silly to me. Is there anything to make of that?
Well, obviously the numbers came out over the weekend, like you said, Ben, but I have not seen the full details yet. And I know you asked about the incentives, but let's see what those incentives actually are. Maybe it's an incentive that if you win the Super Bowl, you get an extra $5 million. That's a team incentive, essentially. So we'll see what those actually are. But I mean, the fascinating thing about Aaron Rodgers, and I think people forget about this, and yes, he's made a lot of money over the course of his career. He gave back to the Jets when he signed there or when he was traded there, $35 million. It's one of the most insane, crazy things that I can remember an NFL player doing. He took a $35 million pay cut when he was there. And now that he was a free agent, the Steelers were desperate. If Aaron Rodgers wanted like $35 million, he could have asked for it. And the Steelers really had no other veteran option they could have gotten at this point in the offseason. I know Kirk Cousins was out there, but would you prefer Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins, even though maybe both are older and you have some questions about them? I would probably lean Aaron Rodgers. So he really could have held the team in a very, very complicated situation over here. But once again, like he did with the Jets, he was willing to take less over here. And it's a 1 year, $13.65 million deal. $10 million guaranteed. He mentioned that $10 million number on the McAfee show. And it's also worth noting, I know it's definitely less than what quarterbacks get, but this is actually an increase compared to what the Steelers had last year, which was Russell Wilson on a 1 year, $1.2 million deal, and Justin Fields in the final year of his rookie contract, which both those guys combined were making about $3 million. So this is a little bit more than what the Steelers were actually paying last year, which sounds crazy to say, but it is. But overall, it's definitely way less than what quarterbacks are getting nowadays around the NFL. And as a result, the Steelers are going to have some money over here to maneuver for the rest of the offseason. I mean, we know they need another receiver. It's very well known. We've spoken about it here on the show over the last several weeks. They've checked in on the Jonnu Smiths and the Kyle Pitts and the Keenan Allens, who, of course, is a free agent right now. Amari Cooper is out there. Gabe Davis is out there. There's guys out there. If they need to spend $6, $7, $8 million to get a guy, they could do it now with the extra money over here that was saved. They came into this deal with about $31 million in salary cap space. We'll see how they officially structure this Rodgers deal, but overall, they have some money over here to build a team around them. And again, like we said when Aaron signed on Thursday, or when he officially agreed to join them on Thursday, this is a move by the Steelers where it's essentially there's potential for Grand Slam. There's also potential for a strikeout. And also there's a personal standpoint for Aaron Rodgers where I don't think he wanted his career to end the way it did with the Jets, where it's a sour taste. It just didn't go well for 2 years. The first year was not necessarily his fault, the Achilles tear, but only winning 5 games last year. I think he wants to go out in a better way. Obviously, the Steelers are hoping for a Super Bowl or whatever, but even if Aaron's able to get this team to 10 wins and a playoff appearance, for him to go out like that would be more suitable as well. So there's a personal standpoint to this entire thing. There's a team standpoint to all of this. And overall, Aaron kept true to his word. He did sign a deal that was basically the amount of money that he said he would on the McAfee show. He has never been about the money anymore over the last several years, and these last couple of deals have definitely shown that.
All right. That is all I've got for you today. Thank you guys for watching along, subscribing, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We have a fun guest coming up on tomorrow's episode. I'm excited. We got a spotlight guest. He'll be being announced on your X page later today. And I think you guys will enjoy it.
Yep, that will do it here for our Monday, June 9 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. Like Ben said, keep an eye on my X page to find out who the special Tuesday Spotlight guest of the week will be. But until then, we will see you all here tomorrow morning with that special guest. We'll see you then.